Hi, I'm Marinus Landhuis. I'm from Denver, Colorado now, but I came from Minnesota originally. And I flew this aircraft behind me in 1953. I went into the Navy NAVCAD program in Pensacola, Florida. And I spent probably a year and a half to 2 years at Pensacola area flying this aircraft. The last thing we did was to land it aboard the Monterey, a carrier that they have down there. Because I'm a Navy pilot, and you have to learn to land on ships. After that, I went to, there were several bases that I went to, instruments and bombing and different fields that I landed at. And then I went to Corpus Christi, Texas for my advanced training. Basic training was in the Pensacola area. And at that time, they were looking for more pilots, so I found out about it at my college in northwest Iowa, Horn City. And they were looking for pilots if you could get two years of college in and then have good eyesight and, pass your grade. This was in April of '53, so I graduated in June of '53. And so then I went down there for training, and I'm kind of stepping ahead of myself here. I learned how to fly, and I soloed, which is the big thing for a pilot. I soloed on April 2, 1954, and that happened to be my dad's birthday. And I really tickled about that. And they came up to see me. They lived in southwest Minnesota, not too far from Worthington. And then they came up to Des Moines because we flew up there, my instructor, or I and my instructor, I should say. And then that was around the date that I'd solo. Anyway, after I got through with Pensacola, the basic training, I went to Corpus Christi, Texas, actually Kingsville, and then I was jet transition. Went from propeller planes like this one to jets. And so then I learned to fly jets, and I flew it was the TV-2 it was called, and it had the straight wings with fuel tanks on the ends. And I got to learn to fly that, transitioning to that. And then after I got my wings and my ensign stripe for in the Navy, and then I went to, that was a great day, of course, to get those wings, because I was in all this training for that. And then I was transferred to Alameda, California. And there I went into an active squadron, a fighter squadron, VF-63. And it later was converted to VA-63, which went from a fighter squadron to an attack squadron. And there we had, to start with, we had F-9, F-6s. They were Cougar with a swept wing. But then later on, we got the newer planes, the F-9, F-8, made by Grumman, excellent plane maker. So flew that, and then we trained in Fallon, Nevada for gunnery and things like that. And then for FCLP, which is Field Carrier Landing Practice, in the middle of California, they had some fields where they had to mark off the size of the carrier deck, and you had to come in and land there. And of course, we didn't have our hook down, but we had to land, and at that place we had LSOs, landing signal officers, as the old way with the flags. Now they've got a convex lens mirror system on the carriers that the British have developed, and it has a line of green lights, and then they have what they call a meatball, and you come in on the right angle or right speed, and then you just fly it into the deck. It's almost like, don't tell the Navy this, but it's almost like a automatic landing, in that it's like a controlled crash, so to speak. Very difficult, I think, on the airplanes, but Grumman builds an excellent airplane. And so I spent 6 months on the carrier, the CVA Shangri-La 38, and then I went to back to Alameda, California, and then I was going to make it a career, but the Navy has a way of needing pilots or not needing pilots. So the 6 of us that had originally gone in from college 4 of us made it. I was one of the 4, and the other 2 for blood pressure or eyesight or maybe depth perception. Of course, that's important. And they didn't make it. So anyway, I went in. I wanted to make a career. Well, then the ups and downs with the service, they have the need or not have the need. And the 2 that made it were both 4-year college graduates, and I think that had something to do with it, and it should, because an education is very important. And we only had 2 years of college. So anyway, I went into, then when I found out I had to extend 6 months, my enlistment was 4 years, so I had to extend 6 months in order to find out whether I made active, I made a regular commission or not, because I was a reserve officer. And once I found out, I had to decide, because at that time they had lieutenant commanders that were reserve officers had stayed in, like I was if I'd have stayed in, and then some of them were getting what they call passed over. In other words, they didn't get their regular commission. So if you have 12 to 16 years in, then you got to start over. That's kind of tough. So I decided to get out, and before I got out, we got the new airplanes. You got FJ-4Bs made by North American, Fury, and they were excellent aircraft, and they were also going to be used for VA work, in other words, attack aircraft, and we could carry an A-bomb as they could, and that was quite an experience. Everybody knows this now that they have those pretty frequent, but I did in that FJ-4B, I got to go through the sound barrier 4 times, and that was pretty exciting and pretty hard on my heart, so to speak. Pretty exciting. And it was over Monterey, California, over Monterey Bay, and at that time, of course, pilots weren't allowed to break the sound barrier on land because it would break windows, break dishes, and it just was not allowed. So we could do it, according to the date, we could do it over Monterey Bay. We'd climb up to 45,000 feet and turn it straight down, full power, and then we'd go through the sound barrier. And it's kind of like hitting some washboards on a gravel road. And then once you go through that, it smooths out, but then when you come back on the other side, it's rough again. But you want to be sure to pull out on time because you're moving pretty fast. And I think the sound barrier, if I remember correctly, at sea level is about 731 miles an hour. But I didn't go that fast because I pulled out before I got to the sea level. And so I probably made 650 miles an hour, but it was fast, and it was exciting. And so when I got out and my term was up, after I had told them that I was going to get out since I didn't make regular commission, then I went to back to school in Mankato, Minnesota, to get my 3rd and 4th year, and I flew out of Old Chamberlain there, the civilian airport at Minneapolis, and I flew there for about a year, and that was great. And we went back. At that time, they would go back to the older aircraft, so I got into the Panther, which was the straight wing jet by Grumman, and it had fuel tanks on the end. And the swept wing, of course, were the neat airplanes, and of course they've made several airplanes since then. I think they might even make the twin jet one. I'm not sure. My memory's not too good. I'm only 85, and I only remember what I tried to remember. But that was pretty much my life. And I just want to interject this, that I lived on a farm. We milked cows like this, and I had come from a family of 6 boys and 1 girl, and 4 of us were in the Navy at different times. My 2 oldest brothers were in the Second World War. My 4th oldest was in during the Korean War. He was at Guam. Then I was in from 1953 to 59. And there was no war. I guess they figured that we better not start anything because this guy's in training. No, I'm just kidding. But it was great, and I appreciate serving my country and all of those who do. So thank you very much.